Welcome to the Pokemon Podcast. It's your host, Manny64, and in today's episode, we have a very special guest, someone who's probably been referenced many times on the podcast and is aware of that also. So it's my pleasure to bring in CptAuro, also known as Simon, who's a Pokemon VGC player in the UK scene, and I'm just glad to have you here, my brother, man. How you been keeping up?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on your podcast. I've been enjoying the episodes that you brought out recently. They're really good. I've just enjoyed the content. So it's a pleasure to be on the podcast.
No, that's awesome, man. I just want to say, before we even get into it, I kind of wanted to start off with, your journey in playing the game. And I met you at an event, which I want to let people know that, there's quite a really friendly atmosphere when you go to these events and you meet, so many different people with so many different backgrounds. And do you want to just talk to, how you got into the game and then potentially jump into, how we even met?
Yeah, 100%. So I have played Pokemon since it's come out. So my first game was Pokemon Blue, I believe. My sister got Pokemon Red, so we played it as kids together. Obviously, it was just casual then. Just played the games ever since then. Been aware of the VGC scene when it started up, followed it a little bit, but not huge amounts. And then pandemic comes into play, and that's when I start playing myself because I have a bit more time on my hand to kind of give it a go before I say and see if I actually enjoy playing it. So I played it with my, I say VGC, we have battles with my friends when I was 14 years old. But we did not EV the Pokemon. We did not use moves like Protect and Carmine. We were just gun-ho, trying to knock each other out. So, it was a very different mentality to learn, okay, actually Pokemon can do more bespoke things, especially if you start partnering them up with the right partner. And that's... So yeah, the pandemic's when I started during Sword and Shield series. I just started at the end of Series 6, so I really kind of played a few games in Series 6, and then it moved on to Series 7. And then, obviously, during the pandemic, I had enough time to sit down, watch streamers play, get to know the community. Eventually, once stuff started heading towards restricted format and people lost interest, me and a friend, Nicholas, or NG by his Twitter tag, set up what we now call Daycare Poker Cup, which is like a little cup VGC scene. So that's something that I've done in the community, but it's a lot smaller now that live tournaments are back. It's something we just occasionally play draft leagues in, and we have a small community that play it, enjoy it. So it's something fun to do alongside the normal VGC stuff. And then from there, once the pandemic kind of actually nearly kind of live events were coming back and everything like that, my first event I actually went to was EUIC in London, which was really good just to kind of, meet all the people that I've been speaking to, including people from America. I met one of my best mates, Noah, who's been so supportive during me playing VGC. He's really knowledgeable on the game. He's built a few teams that I've played that have been amazing. But yeah, I've met loads of people there, enjoyed the event, managed to go 5-4 with Excalibur Palance, which was quite nice. So, you get a positive result. You're kind of oh, might actually be all right at this game.
Yeah.
So played that, and then made the decision from there that I'm going to play a few live tournaments. From that point, obviously the schedule hadn't really come out, and I had a busy year after EUIC, so I didn't get to play for the rest of that event other than a couple of locals in Bristol and Portsmouth. So really my first event was the event I met you at, Lille.
Okay.
So that was my first event. I didn't go to Barcelona, I went to Lille. Obviously we played in, was it round
Two.
2.
Two, I
There you
think. Round two,
go.
yeah.
I think round 2, yeah. And obviously when I first met you, we were just chatting away like you normally do. I was just like, who is this guy? And you were like, oh, you're that guy off of this. And we were just like chatting. I was like, all right. And then we were just like chatting, which was good.
Yeah.
And I think I just started streaming at that point as well, like like a month before.
Yeah.
So obviously I'd been a bit more active. And obviously we played our game. I think the one thing I remember from our game, and I think we've spoken about this, because we're like, it was the look I gave you after you did this.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, what? So this is obviously like round 2, and I'm thinking, you don't know who you're up against. You don't really play any of the major players, so you don't know how good they are. And I think, I can't remember what I had on the left side of the field, but I had Crest on the right side of the field, which obviously has the ability levitate, which ignores any critical type.
You had Landorus and Cresselia. That
Yeah.
was it. I had Lando, and I can't remember who was on my left, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah, and I switched out Crest into Asui and Arcanine, going, it'll be fine. And you just, was it stomping me? You just stomping that slot.
Well, I remember I think what happened was Landorus, I didn't know if your Landorus was faster than mine. We both had Choice Scarf, I think, at that point. So you turned, and I already hit stomping, and I failed it. So I was like, well, Landorus can't do anything to my Landorus. We're both like been intimidated, I think, at that point, because at the very start. And I was like, if you swap out, something's gonna get hit by a stomping, which is double damage. From as far as I understand the game, that's what I thought was gonna happen. It's like, okay, you turn, and then you're like, okay, maybe he's just slower, so you might have assumed I was gonna U-turn as well. And then you swap in the Arcanine, and I'm just looking at, and then I just use the move, and then you just look at me like, what the hell just happened? What is going on?
I just kind of like looked at it like going, you really made that play. Like, you really made that play. And you know, the thing during that tournament was I managed to go 6-3 in the end. I did manage to win our game.
Yeah.
But I felt good during that tournament. Like, there was a different feeling to that tournament than I had at EUIC, and then now looking back on Gdansk, there was definitely a different feeling. Not because of the team, but I think how I had mentally prepared going into that tournament was very different to the other two. So that's made me something more aware, and it's made me assess how I now prepare for these events, which is really good. So yeah, obviously it was brilliant playing you, and then obviously we went to Gdansk and met up in Gdansk and hang out in Gdansk, and that was really good to just obviously get to know you more on a personal level, because at Lille, my girlfriend was there.
It was just like a hi, how are you kind of thing, and I'll see you later kind of thing. But it's because I don't know for you, but for me personally, it was quite nice to like meet people from the UK. Like I remember I won my first game, and I was like to my friend, "Oh my god, I'm versing someone from the UK. Like this is gonna be awesome. Let me just have a chat with them." And then it's funny because I talk a lot, but like I don't even think we spoke about the game. I remember you said something like Marco Silva's here. And for those of you who are not aware, like Marco Silva is a football manager. So I'm like looking around, and I'm a massive football fan. I'm like, what do you mean he's here? Like, is his son here? Like, what's going on? And then you just look at me like, this guy, like, because you knew football, you're like, bro, I meant the Italian VGC player. And I'm familiar with some VGC players, but not a lot. So like for me, I'm coming in with like a fresh set of eyes in that context. So it's like I don't know who I'm up against, which might be a good thing, but at the same time, it's also a hindrance because it's like, oh, you're versing someone who's really good. They might do X, Y, Z, and I don't know what's going on. So I think it's just having people and knowing people that like from the same region as you is quite nice, just to like hear like, oh, where do you go to your locals? Where have you traveled to? Oh, that's not too bad. And then obviously there's an event that's happening up in Liverpool, and I know a lot of people in the scene are going to be there. I'm going to be there. You're going to be there. So it's quite awesome that we have access to people like that. And I just wanted to know like what the scene's like, because even around like near where I live, there's like one main local, but other than that, it's not really that much going on. And I know it's obviously different in different regions, but I just want to rewind a little bit, because you mentioned that you played the game obviously casually when your sister and yourself had the game, and then you played with some friends. You kept up to date with VGC like back in the day. not too closely. How it's quite interesting that you've jumped in from like having a break because of what happened like during that time during the pandemic. What made you decide? Like, obviously there were streams and people playing the game, but did you feel like Pokemon was rising in popularity? I know the card was a massive factor in that sense as well during that period of time. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously during that time, everything was just locked down. Like I worked in retail at that time. I didn't work in a what you would classify as a key worker. So I was off work, right? So I had from whenever I got up to whenever I went to bed to do something. So obviously, you keep yourself active, keep yourself fit and healthy, go outside, you do like everything you can during the pandemic. Um, but getting into Pokemon was mainly because I've always been a big gamer myself. So I'm always involved in games, playing everything. I've always bought the Pokemon games. Like there's always been a thing. The new one comes out, I buy it. I play it casually. Um, Maybe watch a few VGC stuff, but I don't get involved. And the main reason for that was previously before was the accessibility and the effort you had to go into to train Pokemon, breed Pokemon was so much more difficult before Sword and Shield. So I think Sword and Shield had the perfect storm for it for me, and I know potentially for other people where the accessibility to actually enter VGC and the fact that you hadn't enough time off to
Yeah.
learn the game. You weren't doing it after your 9 to 5, you weren't exhausted, you had enough time, you woke up, you go, okay, have breakfast, chill out. Okay, now I'll watch the stream, find out stuff. It was the perfect storm. Met so many people through watching the stream, um, talking to people in the chat or talking to the streamers. That's how I made a lot of friends. And then I was already on Discord, but I didn't really use it a huge amount.
Yeah.
And then getting involved in more Discord communities. Yeah, the pandemic was like a perfect kind of brewing storm, I think, for the VGC community. I think now the VGC community is benefiting off that now. I don't think it's just myself. I think there's a lot more players who have come to community. We saw it this week where Tom Hayden put a limitless tour on for Regulation F, and there was like nearly 1,000 players.
Yeah,
I was like,
it was crazy.
it was mad, and it was just like all these players have come to play this one game because of the joint enjoyment of it. Obviously, they all want to be the best, but at the same time, they're wanting to play with these teams that they've made and things like that, and they've learned the game over time. So yeah, I think for me, the pandemic was just a perfect brewing storm in terms of getting into the game, and the game became more accessible in terms of EV training, breeding, anything you could do.
Yeah, no, and it's quite interesting because even for me, like I remember when I used to play, and I played like X and Y, and I did some like hyper training, and that was a little bit easier to understand what EVs were. And then I took a break, and then I saw what Dynamax was, and I'm be honest, I saw Dynamax, I was like, I'm not messing around with this game mechanic. It just seems a bit weird. So kind of put me off. But then when I found out the new game mechanic was like changing types of Pokemon, I was quite excited in that context because I thought it would give a chance for Pokemon that I personally like to be able to shine, and we're seeing that now with like a lot of Pokemon that you wouldn't expect, like doing really well and stuff. And it's like, did you know an Incineroar can counter an Urshifu? Like we would never be saying that like years ago. Like it's hilarious in that context, and it's quite nice that you've been able to take that opportunity to make the most of that experience, because you even mentioned, like you talked a little bit about this Little Cup VGC thing you've done with someone during that period, and it's nice to bring people together. I want to acknowledge you for that, because you've not only helped yourself, but you've obviously helped other people. And I see that even watching your streams, that like people are invested, people want to know. Like I've jumped into your stream spamming you with questions. I know probably you'd be happy to jump on a call with me, but it's just having that interaction whilst you're streaming, seeing what you do. It's like something that I personally enjoy, and I feel like it's just something that helps you learn the game better and get to know someone better in that sense. And you've obviously spoken about people from America and all over the place. Like it's such a crazy thing that you've been able to do that.
Yeah, and I think in terms of like regarding my stream on Twitch is if people come in and they're genuinely asking questions, I'm just going to be like, well, this is how I see it. It's obviously that's based off my perception or my experience of it. I remember the one big advice when I first joined VGC was I can't remember. It was like a couple of streamers, and I was like, "Oh, what team should I use?" Like, blah blah. Blah. They were like, "Oh, use Trick Room, use Trick Room, use Trick Room." Like, if you're a beginner, use Trick Room. And I think it's like the age-old advice in VGC.
Yeah.
I hated it because the problem was they were saying like use Trick Room, like hard Trick Room. You don't have another mode. I found out that I'm like a very balanced player, so I like teams that are bulky enough that you kind of make a mistake, but you can get away with it. You have another turn to kind of get with it. So those are my favorite teams to play. Whereas like hyper offense, I'm like, oh, it's like I can play it, I can play Trick Room, but I don't really like it. I like having dual speed control. I like having a way I can play in Trick Room, and I like having a way I can control the speed when we're not in Trick Room. So if anyone ever asked me what would you suggest first playing, I would say find a Pokemon you want to play. Like, find a Pokemon you enjoy
100%.
playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, that was Triathlon. I found a video from Cyrus Studios, or Lee Provost, on his YouTube channel from a team that was on Liberty Note, which, for people who don't know, I believe it's a Japanese Pokemon VGC site, and they have loads of rental teams up there. And it was this team made of Tracheon, Wim, Rillaboom, Zapdos, Banded, Single Strike Urshifu, who was the Heatran, right?
Yeah.
Me being into VGC, the only thing I knew was, oh, you can do the justified beat up trick with Whimsicott, right?
Yeah.
Which was just amazing. Like, I think if you can get away with that, you can really roll teams, and especially because it was just best of one. Sometimes you play players who didn't know, and you're playing in a Dynamax area where you make it even worse. You'll pick like a match Rockfall on someone
Yeah.
at +3, so it's like a very, very powerful attack. So that's what I'd say to people: find a Pokemon you really, really enjoy. See if you can find a rental team. You know, and once you get a hand of that rental team or teams that you've played before, go ahead and build teams. Don't be afraid to just go and sling something into the builder. Say, oh, I like this tech that someone put on it.
Yeah.
On this Pokemon, can this Pokemon do it? You know, I know your crit scope.
Yeah.
Reggie Drago. Yeah, so you know that's always a good idea. Like, you can take things and see if it will work. If it does work, you know, it gives you an advantage against your opponent sometimes, having this weird techniques. You know, we've seen Jamie Boyett do so well this season because he's taken a very common Pokemon, added a couple of maybe unusual Pokemon, but also his common Pokemon, you've got like a sub-Urshifu that can live certain hits from that it shouldn't live.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
So,
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because when it comes to teams, and I always say this to people as well, like, choose a Pokemon that you enjoy playing with and then build a team around that. But I think one part of that puzzle that you've kind of touched on as well was, when you find a team, play with that team with that Pokemon, or potentially find different teams which fall into these archetypes or these domains that you mentioned, like hard Trick Room or hyper offense, balance. And I feel like once you find out what Pokemon you want, if you know which way you like playing the game, I think that also facilitates that team building process. Because like, when I've showed you some of the calcs earlier today, like on the call, like,
yeah.
in my head I'm probably thinking like, this guy just thinks he's crazy, what's he doing? But like, there's a beauty, or there's a beauty behind the madness. There's a reasoning behind why I did that. And I think once you find out what your reasoning is and how it works and how you wish to play, like, if I'm honest with you, I don't really know how I want to play. I want to play balance, but at the same time I stick on Tailwind, which it kind of can work with balance, but like, it's not like super like aggro. I'm gonna try and like hit you every turn and do as much damage as possible. I like to take my time and things like this, but it's finding a style that works with you. Like, that Focus Energy Reggie Drago set came from the fact that I sat one night and I thought, I can't beat Dondozo. What if Dondozo comes? What shall I do? And I just made a set, and it's like, it's a Pokemon I wanted to use. I like using it, but I wanted to use it slightly differently. And I remember like Hydreigon was very popular at the very beginning of the game, and it used Focus Energy Scope Lens. I'm like, well, if this Pokemon can use it, and it's I don't want to say it's less powerful because it's a pseudo, but in the context of it's a Pokemon that doesn't have as much bulk as a Regidrago, why can't that be the case? Why can't I use it for this Pokemon? And it's finding sometimes the formula for what you need is already on a different Pokemon, and like you said, you can just take that, use it, apply it, and see what works with you. And it's I enjoy. To be honest, I enjoyed that part of the game more. I don't know about you, but for me, it's like when I build a team, there's a certain level of satisfaction. And talking about teams, I know you had the privilege of you had a team, you versed your own team, and can you speak to that? And obviously, you worked with someone to make this team, of course, and it's just interesting just to hear. And I remember you spoke to us in dancing, like I feel like I've just versed my own team with slight changes. It's really cool.
Yeah, so the team was originally created by Noah, or Almost Good Enough Gaming. So he went to Peoria and finished just outside the top 16, so top 17. And then myself, Toller, and Emmy, who are two American players, picked up the team. Now they played a slight variant of it to deal with the Among Us answer. I played the exact same team that Noah took to Peoria. I made changes in terms of the EV. So me and Noah, based off his experience from Peoria, where he finished top 17, kind of went, okay, what things were issues? What things do we think are going to become problems in the future? And do we have answers already within the team, or do we need to change a member of the team? That happened later down the road for Gdansk. So we changed 8 into Moltres. So when I actually played the original team, Moltres was on the team, and the original person who I played had the original team with 8.
Yeah.
When we took it to Lille, it was Annihilate. So Citrus Berry, Annihilate with Bulk Up, Roll Dice, Arcanine, Rock Blast, Rock, the Rage Fist, which just runs through teams if you don't have screens or a way to stop it. Pursuing Gudra with Life Dew, and Shelter for the body, the plus defense, which can just wall any physical team, which this meta has been very, very physical. Cresselia, Grimmsnarl, and Ogerborn. Ogerborn was kind of the last addition on the team, because there was a variant where we had Scar Urshifu, but Ogerborn kind of supported the team slightly better in terms of it gave us a fire, water, grass claw. It was designed for one specified matchup that we needed to beat, and then it also allowed us to have redirection, and it was paired with Hornage. So across the team, you had Drain Punch, Intimidate, Screens, Lunar Blessing, Life Dew, Shelter, and Hornage. This team was just built to stay on the field as long as possible, and sustain itself, and just whack down these teams that were trying to take it out. The good thing was obviously Suing Gudra has shell armor, which stops any critical hits. So the problem with sometimes this team is that you can have this team, if you don't have an ability like that, you are susceptible to critical hits, even through screens. Like Pritch just ignores screens, so you have that issue. So Suing Gudra was really, really good for this team. So facing this team we played it in Lille, went 6-3, just missed out on top cut. To then going to the Gdansk and not playing so well. I think I was like on the lower tables. I think by the time I played this team, I was something like, I think I was maybe like 3-3 at this time. So I just literally went back to 4-3 or something like that. It just really wasn't my event. I wasn't playing as well as I could have, despite a very good start. But playing my own team and seeing it, or I say my own team, Noah's team, and seeing it and going, "Oh, I know what this does." And that's part of the reason is a lot of people go, well, you got an 8 and a weird Arcanine set. I don't know what Rock Blast does, right? And then they suddenly see it. Like I literally played a player, Lil, and did that thing, and he went, "Oh," and he was like, right, that's why there's Rock Blast. I did not see it on the team sheet. Sometimes you see the the writing on the team
Yeah.
sheet that you get handed, and you see it, and you go, "Why has he got Rock Blast on an Arcanine? It's usually Rock Slide. Like, why?" So, knowing what it did, I led Grimmsnarl, Moltres, and when he went Arcanine 8, and I just went, "Okay, T-Wave the Arcanine, your Rock Blasts aren't going to come off in time for you to be able to basically get a hit off." So I was able to nasty plot up my Moltres and just go from there. So it was interesting, but because I knew the mechanics, I could then flowchart to beat it.
Yeah, and I say this very lovingly. I hate your team. Like I hated it. I remember watching your stream and I'm like, the thing is, because like you mentioned, at Lille we spoke to each other very briefly, and I remember you mentioning to me that you were going to go to Gdansk, and I watched one of your streams and I was like to my friend, I versed yourself, and then I was like, if Simon brings this team and I verse him, what am I going to do? So then I sat there, I made my team. And then I remember it was Thursday night and the events on Saturday, and I just scrapped that whole team completely, made a new one. And then I mentioned shell armor, but it's so easy to forget these things. And in my head, I'm like, if he sets up screens, focus energy, Draco Meteor, Scorpions, that's gonna create anything. But then you begin to realize that there's certain Pokemon that aren't affected by crits, like you mentioned, the Goodra, and like that, I hate the Hisuian Goodra, I'm sorry. There's certain Pokemon that I despise, and you obviously know that. I message you every day saying, this is my new pet peeve, or this is my new hate, which is hilarious, and there's certain things that I've decided to do to try and mitigate that. But I think it's all part of the game, and it's all something that ultimately, I enjoy it enough where, I'm willing to make these adjustments and make certain teams to work around these things, and it's I feel like there's a sense of pride that comes from make your own team, and I always say to people, if you want to learn how to get better at the game, making a team is a core component of that, because even if it might not be meta or something really defining, if you know how to play the team well with the skill set that you have, it'll be unique to you, and you'll find ways to work around it if you ever see it come against you, like you mentioned, or you'll be able to work around things that people wouldn't expect. There's certain things on team sheets where you look at something and sometimes you just think it's a mistake, or if I saw Rock Blast, I'll be honest, I would think, oh, maybe it should have been Rock Slide, or it's just maybe you might say to me, oh, you know what, I didn't put the right move on it, but it's because it serves a certain purpose and you know how it fulfills that purpose, that you being the person that knows that, you are at an advantage compared to your opponent. Even with all this accessibility and all the privilege of having information around people's teams and things like this, I remember I Terra Grassed my Heatran versing Arcanine and Rillaboom, and the person who had the Hisuian Arcanine flare blitzed me, and they forgot I had Flash Fire. And it's just moments like that where you just need to keep your cool, and you forget. And I feel like when you go to a live event, it's having that mentality of staying calm, play the game as you think you should play it in terms of how you would intend to play it the first game, get the knowledge, get the understanding, and then transition over to like you said, flow charting and having understanding. I love watching games with you because you're to me, bang, 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 this one needs to happen. And I just sit there in awe. I'm like, how do you know that's the best thing to do? I was like, why didn't you do this? And you're like, no, because of this could mean this, which means you should be doing that instead. And it's your brain, for me, it reminds me of Football Manager where you're you got tactics, and then it's this person needs to go here, you need to go here. And it's such a good thing to build up. It's such a good skill to have. That's why I like asking you a lot of questions, because I see it from my own perspective. But when I speak to you, you're to me, this would make sense, but you didn't consider X, and it's having that information and increasing that, reducing that lack of information is so important. And I just like when you do that, and it's like you said, flow charting is so important.
Yeah, and I think I'm still trying to learn with flow charting, especially in best of one games. When you play on ladder, it's always best of one. In tournaments, you have a bit more forgiveness. You get crit, okay, then I've got game 2, right? Best of one, you get crit, you've got to deal with it. That's RNG, done. Don't complain about RNG. It will happen for you and it will happen against you. You're going to have to deal with it at some point. So best of one, don't get too worried about it. But the thing I always think when I'm flow charting is, why am I doing this? And what will happen next are the two most important things. So sometimes it was a game I was playing yesterday on Showdown. I think I had an easy KO onto one of the Pokemon, but I was like, hang on, if I KO this Pokemon, I'm in a bad position because they're going to bring this out, and I'm then not in the optimal position to beat it. So what I did instead was what probably the player wasn't expecting was to not attack that Pokemon and to attack the other Pokemon, even though I knew it was going to be a low roll, to allow me to reset up Tailwind for the next turn.
Yeah.
So that I had 4 turns of Tailwind back, and I could then KO his Pokemon, bring out Pokemon I didn't want to deal with no Tailwind, and then KO that very easily.
Yeah.
So it's then going like, why am I doing this? What's going to happen next? What's my opponent going to have? And I think you've always got to think, based off their front 2 they bring, what are they most likely back to? It's a lot easier, like I said, in best of 3, because when we played our game at Lille, I didn't know you as a player, you didn't know me as a player.
Of course.
So when you did that move, I was like, right, he's 1, a bit ballsy, and 2, he understands the game a little bit, right? So he knows certain players are going to try and take advantage of easy switches that players might not see, right? So then I was like, right, well, I'm going to do this now. So I played in a different style and I adjusted to your style. And I think that's probably one of my better strengths in best of 3 when I'm on my best day, is I can go, first game is almost like a test run for me. If I win it, fantastic. If I don't, I've got 2 more games to win. So I can kind of then go, right, how did he play in that first game? What did he bring? What's he going to adjust to? Is he going to bring the same or is he going to adjust into a different strategy to throw me off? And that I learned a lot from. I was privileged enough to play Jamie Boyer in Lille, and I managed to take game 3, and he just completely flipped the 4 on me that he brought, and it just threw my game plan straight out the window.
Yeah.
And it was just like, cool, like you do things like that. But it was the right moment for him to do it, and I should have just a similar way of going, actually, he's going to change drastically. Because game 1 had the advantage, game 2 I adjusted well enough to what he played again, and he brought the same lead, so I should have thought, he's going to bring a different lead, he's going to bring a different 4, let's go with this. But that game taught me so much, and actually it helped me through that tournament as well to go 6-3. Unfortunately fell a little bit short of top cutting, but that's the game we play.
No, of course. So. And you obviously realizing in hindsight you should have adjusted to that because you won the second game. Having that understanding, and you're really good at picking out which Pokemon are coming in. I remember watching the stream of our game, and you're like, he's got Ogerpon in the back, and you just knew, and you made such a good read. How do you find out and identify which Pokemon are going to be coming? What do you think the thought process is there? Because if I didn't bring out Ogerpon, that could have swayed the game in a different direction, but why were you so confident that was the case?
Experience. That's what it all comes down to. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, there is talent down to it. You look at players like Justin Tang, they're just very talented players who read the game, though he does have a lot of experience at VGC across graphics, singles, doubles, so it's no surprise that he's done so well when he entered the scene. But it does come down to experience at a point, because it's like a catalogue of games in my head, and I've gone, well, I've played a similar team before, I've played you before, I've got this, what counters this, what counters my team, what are the 4 brings gonna be. But it's also because I played with a team before, right, well, what other people have brought their counters, what have I struggled against, what have people felt were the best counters to my team. So again, it's flipping those questions I said of what happens now and why, is those are the questions you're asking yourself, even though you might not be aware of them. Subconsciously, you are asking yourself, why am I bringing this Pokemon? Why am I bringing it? What happens if I don't bring this Pokemon? What's the best 4 into his team? So you've got to start thinking around that. And then obviously, as I said previously, it's like, once you see the lead, you can start going, right, what's the back 2? You can start going, what's his best back 2 off of this lead? Real simple one would be, let's say, Blood Moon versus Lunar Trick Room, right? You either get Hands, Dust Skull, and then Ursaluna in the back, and then the fourth one would be an answer to potentially a difficult matchup, right?
Yeah.
So you're getting faked out, trick room, and then they'll decide, right, am I going to do damage with my Iron Hand, and then Will-O-Wisp, something that I don't want Ursaluna to take too big of a hit with. And they're just trying to get the board state position where Blood Moon Ursaluna can get onto the board and then rip through the team.
Yeah.
Right? I think was it Frederick Nielsen who did that really well with his team in the last European tournament. I think he had Blood Moon Ursaluna. I think he had Farigara instead, and then like a fake out one. But he then brought Fluttermane as well for speed control after the Trick Room ended. So his whole plan was, right, I'm going to get Ursaluna in such a good position that it's taken a few KOs, Trick Room ends, and I have a speed booster blaster on the field where I can now get speed control back. Right? So it's staging those games in terms of like, what does turn 1 look like? What does turn 2 look like? 3, but it's also asking your questions. Why am I doing that on turn 1? What happens next? Why am I doing that now? What happens next in turn 3? So you're constantly reassessing the flow chart as well.
Yeah, you're like two turns ahead, it just sounds like. Because even yesterday night I was playing and I was like, in my head, the Whimsicott was doing nothing to my Annihilate behind the screen with and only having Moonblast after I Terrified. And I thought to myself, leave that on the field. Sometimes it's best just to leave a Pokemon on the field because it's basically redundant and it can't do anything to you. And it's just going to stack up the Rage Fist at that point. So I think you raised a good point there where you even mentioned your game. You left something on the field because you knew, yes, you could have taken it out, but then it's what's coming in next. It's the fear factor of what's potentially next is where you end up playing in a way where you try to avoid that from going down that path, because then your flowchart obviously then changes once again because it's a reset point. It's something else is coming in, Pokemon swapped, etc. So
yeah, and I think as well, just off of that, is like when you don't ask yourself those two questions, like why and what happens next, is you tend to play a bit more defensive. I've noticed that with myself. I've noticed like I've had games where if I just attacked, the game swung into a massive advantage for myself. Like one of the ones was I played an MS. I got in a great position with the Annihilate. This was in Lille. I was playing a Bondozo team, and all I needed to do was Rage Fest, and I clicked Protect, and then the momentum went back into my opponent's advantage, and I couldn't claw it back from there because the speed tiering. So it's always kind of like being aware of
your board state and knowing when to capitalize on that opportunities that arise.
Yeah, and when to click it. I also think when you're at a disadvantage, sometimes you play a bit defensive. So sometimes actually going, right, well, I'm actually at a disadvantage. I'm not winning this game currently. What can I do to flip it? Can I get an easy KO? Can I get a damage? Can I get a flinch, a para, something that will change that situation,
of course,
right?
Of the game.
Yeah. Obviously, if you're dealing with RNG, like I said before, if you get it, cool. If you don't get it, then you've just got to say, right, they played better, right? That's the case with RNG. But I think, especially when your back's against the wall, sometimes it's better to just go, right, I'm just going to hit you, and I'm going to see what happens. And if I lose, I'm losing a win, so it doesn't matter.
Whenever I think of RNG, I feel like I wish I had the clip of you versing me and saying, but that's basically what you said in your podcast. Like, that will stick to me forever. Because I remember you literally referenced me. We're chatting, and I was like, oh, yeah, just the game's the game. And you're like, oh, but you said in your podcast, remember? Just to hit home that point about RNG. So, yeah, sometimes it is difficult. It is, like, something that we have to deal with. But it's something you sign up to, in a sense. If you know Thunder Wave is, like, 90% accurate, or 95, I can't remember top of my head. But the point is there's chances it's going to miss. And the amount of times I miss Dracos, but then I get a critical hit Draco, like, the next time I hit it. It's just part and parcel of the game, to be honest. And talking about teams, you mentioned the one that you use from Noah. Is there a team that yourself, and you mentioned the Terrakion team as well, what's your current favorite team, whether that's in this regulation or since you've been playing? What's something that in this era of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet has been your favorite team?
My favorite team? One I obviously I've mentioned those two that have been some of my favorites, but if I'm speaking about one I've built myself, like full 6 built myself, uh, I've probably. It's a weird one to say because they've been inspired by 2 players. So I've got 2. So one's the Sword and Shield era, and one's this era just after EYC. So one was a team Master Mark piloted. It was the series after the restricted series. So he ran a Kyogre, Metagross, Tornadus, Rillaboom, Banded Urshifu, Zapdos team.
I'm taking notes right now because I know when it comes to next year and I see this team is going to be from this person, but yeah.
Yeah, but he was running weakness policy on Metagross, which you obviously could do in the Dynamax era. Like, weakness policy was just so much more viable.
Yeah.
But I did the flip of that team. And when we went to non-restricted, I flipped up the Zapdos to be more defensive. So I actually ran Rocky Helm very early on Zapdos alongside Roost, Hurricane, and T-Bolt, and Bolt Switch on it. So I had a pivot movement on it, alongside the Rillaboom being able to pivot as well. Kept the Banded Urshifu, but I added Blastoise because of
Fake out?
what was it? No, because of the max.
The Gigantamax Blastoise. Yeah.
Yeah, the Gigantamax Blastoise. Obviously, you get chip damage off of its G-Max move.
Yeah.
So I ran that, and it worked really well. It was a really fun team to play best of 1. I didn't play too many tournaments back then, so I was just playing up the ladder and playing on Showdown. But it was a really fun team to use. The other one, so after I played EUIC, obviously you get to watch some of the games. One of my favourite players, Alberto Lara, was there. Alberto at that time was using a team that he'd just made adaptations. Basically, he'd finished as a finalist at the Oceania Internationals, just being beaten by Gavin Michaels with a similar team. And essentially, the team I made off the back of his was a bit more of a bulky variant. As I said, I like playing balanced teams.
Yeah.
So he had Chi-Yu and another one, and I swapped it out for Tinglu because I really enjoyed Tinglu at that time. So the 6 that I had, I actually get it up on my phone and tell you.
Was this during the time Tinglu with Fisher was running about, or was this around that similar time period? Yeah, I was just thinking.
Yeah, it's that whole Fisher period where it was just very, very big. So what was the full 6? I don't remember off the top of mine. So mine was Tinglu, Fluttermane, Arcanine, Corviknight, Klefki, Garchomp, and to be fair, I think Tinglu was the only addition into the team that I added because I preferred Tinglu over Chi-Yu. But it was AV Tinglu, Choice Specs, Flutter, Owl, Safety Goggles, Will-O-Wisp, Arcanine, Bulk Up, Corviknight with Brave Birds and Body Press, Screens, Klefki, and Scarf Garchomp. Right? So you were in a really good position. The thing I did with my Garchomp is I worked out how to make it survive a Moonblast and a Freeze Dry behind screens. Okay. So I made it bulky enough, but I also made it speedy enough that it outsped some of those Pokemon that I needed to outspeed. So that was kind of key to that team. And it was a fun team. Again, played a lot best of 1, played on ladder and then on Showdown. Did go to a tournament with it. Didn't end up doing as well as I would have liked. However, this tournament I had to play was best of 1. So again, speaking about adjustments and things like that, I think in one of my games, the opponent managed to get me locked into Stomping Tantrum, and he had a flying type in the back. My plan was to switch it out, but he managed to get a crit on one of my Pokemon, which means I switched it out. So it happens, That's where I'm like, right, RNG happens. It's best
Yeah.
of one. I can't get too mad. The player made the play to win the game. You know, if he doesn't get that crit, I can switch out. If he does, then it makes it more difficult for me.
No, of course.
So.
And it's interesting because like I'll be honest, with my team I feel like I'm like a best of one warrior, which is really funny because like when I played in the MSS in Gdansk, I finished like 25th. And it was quite good because you get the MSS are quite good in the context of you get to see what other people are playing, but also a lot of people are quite like receptive in the sense of like I ask questions and stuff. And I met Billa. I remember like I was speaking to someone from Germany and he had the Landorus Incarnate team, and it just absolutely took me by storm when I started talking to Billa, but I didn't know who Billa was, so just having a conversation with someone, and we're just chatting about the game. He's teaching me some things, and I speak to the person opposite me because he's from Germany. I was like, "Oh, do you know someone called Billa?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's just the guy you were talking to." And Billa starts waving at me. I'm like, "Oh my god, round whatever it is going to be a long, long day because I'm versus someone who has that much knowledge of the game." But it's just so interesting how the game changes so vastly when you go from best of one to best of three, and it's just that's definitely something that I'll probably discuss as well, just in the context of your team would be good for best of one, but when you play in best of three, it's really about the core concepts that you mentioned, like having the ability to position, having the ability to ask yourself these questions, and constantly ask yourself these questions, and then also take it that step further where you ask the questions onto your opponent. Why did they bring this? Why do you think they'll do this? Is it best to leave this here, X, Y, Z? And that comes obviously after iterating so much and playing the game. But we obviously know this podcast is coming out just before the new year, and the new regulation has come out. So I wanted to jump into talking about some of the new Pokemon in Regulation F. I know we had discussions about this when we were in Gdansk, and I remember like talking about weather's going to be such a big factor and things like this. So I'm quite interested to get your perspective on some of the Pokemon. This is just some of the core Pokemon in that context, as well as Pokemon that are have been added to the game.
Yeah.
Is there anything, just before we even jump in and look at like the order of these Pokemon, is there any Pokemon that like you look at and you're like, this is really like taking a turn for the worse because of the new Pokemon that's been added in, like the biggest loser per se and the biggest winner?
Oh, the biggest loser has to be right now. If it doesn't make a comeback, it's the biggest loser. And I hate saying it because I love this Pokemon just for what it did last series. Hisuian Arcanine. Like, Incineroar's come in, and everyone's jumped on that. Everybody's jumped on Entei. You've also got Sheer Force Lando that's become really popular. And, you know, that's caused it loads of issues. You've also, as mentioned, you've got weather, so you've got Walking Wake, you've got rain teams with Archaludon. It just makes it really, really difficult for pursuing Arcanine at the moment. I can see it making a comeback, but I think everybody's got new toy syndrome right now.
Yeah,
So
I think
everybody's
so
kind
as
of
well.
not touching it.
You know, it's funny because I agree. I think Arcanine's one. One thing that stuck out to me, I think Urshifu Rapid Strike it compared to where it was relative to where it was previously. I think it's taken like it's gone quite low in the context of Raging Bolt and Thunderclap. Like it's just obviously you can read into this and you can make adjustments for that, but that one priority move has made such a significant difference between like the amount of people I've seen personally play Urshifu Rapid Strike, unless it's a rain team in that context where they start with Tornadus Urshifu and then they have a Archaludon in the back. I've not really seen too many crop up now, and it's just that one. I feel like it's so quickly that we see like turns in the game at the very start of the meta. Thunderclap just does so much damage. They Terra Electric as well, and it's a force to be reckoned with. Raging Bolt, especially with protein synthesis, where you can just set up the sun also. And like you mentioned, Walking Wake, Hydro Steam in the sun does 1.5 times damage despite being a water move. So I've had my fair share of getting hit by a water move in the sun and expecting it to be halved, but it really isn't. So it's quite interesting. I feel like Arcanine is one of those Pokemon though, like it's won so many tournaments in Regulation E and prior. Like it's just been like absolutely steamrolling everything. It's one of those Pokemon where you know that the next event that happens, someone's going to use it, and some way, somehow, it's going to find its way in the top 8, and we're not going to know why, and then no one's going to be thinking about it at all. So
yeah, I mean, what I'd always say any Pokemon is the real viable ones are the most consistent ones, but also when you put it down to it, it's the pilot who's piloting the Pokemon, right? We've seen Jamie Boyer do really well with teams that are not meta, because he understands the team. The reason why I did so well with the Suing Hydra team was because I had played it a ton. I had the person who had made the team. So let's say in comparison to the guy I played in Cadets, who just picked it up and played it and made adjustments based off what he felt, I literally had the person who made the team go, right, these are the adjustments, these are the problems. Here's how you pilot this. I literally picked up this team a day before Portsmouth PC because I had no team for going into Lille. I was panicking. And I was like, I need this. And Portsmouth PC was its Portsmouth PC weekend, next weekend's Lille, right? So that's how late I picked up this team. I also got ill after Portsmouth PC, so I didn't play on the weekend. So I had very little practice.
Yeah.
But what helped was I had Noah going, right, let's do a 2-hour session. I'll sit with you. We'll play these games. And I'll tell you where you went wrong and where you should have gone and what I think. And this is where I think you can make adjustments. Played those. Went to Portsmouth PC. Managed to win the Portsmouth PC. I will say a little bit of RNG and a little bit of flowcharting from my finals opponent went incorrect. He should have rage powdered, and I managed to get a crit from a -1 burn Hydra onto a Flutter Mane, which allowed me to win the game. But you know, there's those stages where I had that advantage of knowing my team and then playing it loads over that 1 week to understand it further, plus having the guy who originally invented it and made it. So you can make a really good team, but it's about understanding the team, and your understanding versus your opponent's understanding sometimes can come down to it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you, this was news to me. I didn't know you won the Portsmouth PC, and I think about all the smack I've given you talking to you about the game. I'm like, oh, I feel, yeah, mate, I feel so bad. Part of me likes it. Part of me likes that we have that dynamic, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm talking to a winner. I remember roasting you in the Gdansk one, and I know I started 0-3, but maybe I talk about coming back from that to be honest as a different episode. But it's just
I had a lot of luck during that. I had an opponent timeout in a game where he was actually in the lead, so I won the game. And as I said in the finals, the winning line for my opponent was he rage powders with his signature and moonblasts my
Hydra.
I had Ogreborn on the field, and I think he was a bit worried that I was going to go for an Ivy Cudgel, so we didn't go for the Rage Powder, and I managed to get the crit heavy slam on a -1 burn Flutter Mane. So that's sometimes how the game goes.
No, of course. But yeah, going into this tier list, obviously, I saw Venusaur last night. I know Sleep Powder is it's a bit. It's used quite a lot. Personally, I believe that Lilligant's just a better version of Venusaur, obviously, because it doesn't have its new Gigantic Max form either. What's your thoughts on Venusaur? What do you think about this Pokemon?
I think it's good. People use it because of Sleep Powder in the sun. It's poison typing, which is nice. So it obviously resists Flutter Mane, which is always a bonus. You know, resisting one of the strongest Pokemon is always a bonus. It resists quite a few of the Pokemon, but I don't think it's going to be anything meta defining. I think if we see it win, it's going to be by someone who knows how to pilot it. And I think it's, in my mind, probably I would put it in the bottom tier, in C tier, because it's sleep powder spam right now.
Yeah.
If someone can prove me wrong.
No, of course, I was about to say also off the back of what you just said, relative to all the Pokemon now on the screen as well, like, if we had to make a fair assessment, I don't see Venusaur making, like, many waves. Like you said, people who've played with Sun a lot and know how to pilot the Pokemon very well will use it to great effect. But then there's that whole idea of good Pokemon, good player, or good player, good Pokemon. So, yeah, I would agree. I think C. I think if we're talking about now Clefairy, I'm happy to just go straight to putting these in certain positions, and if you want to talk about the ones that have just been added to the game, also happy to do that. So with Clefairy, I versed Clefairy actually in Gdansk. Its Friend God is obviously such a useful ability. and having the accessibility to follow me as well, I put it into B plus. I don't know if you agree with me. If you think it should be slightly higher or lower, I think it's B plus, probably even A. To be fair, it's just one of those Pokemon where it's a bit of a nuisance, but I feel like once you target it down and you get rid of it, it's not like.
My thing is, it's a bit of a nuisance, but it has all my friends are dead syndrome, which is where a Pokemon can do loads for the team if you play it right, but if you don't play it right, then your opponent just focus down on what you're trying to do and then get rid of the fairy later on, like we've spoken about. I would probably say B plus is good. Friend Guard, Follow Me, Heal, Pulse, Icy Wind. It has a good toolkit to make it useful, but it's pairing it with, it's an enabler. It's an enabler Pokemon, so you want it with something that's going to just run through teams.
Yeah. You obviously said Arcanine is one at the moment that you're a bit saying it's not that great, and I think I echo those thoughts as well. But I feel one of those Pokemon where overall consistency before this thing, before we even had Reg F, easily comfortably looking at A plus. It's been around. It's won all these tournaments. Early thoughts. It's better than the Clefairy, 100%. I feel like even though it's an enabler, I think Arcanine will be better than Clefairy at the end of this regulation when we look at all the results.
Yeah,
I think for the moment now it's just suffering from its success in a sense.
Yeah, one, it's new toys. Two, there's a lot of people running Define as well, so that makes it slightly hard for it. I'm kind of stuck between high B plus and A. I still think it's good. Like I said, I think some really good players are going to pick it back up and go, actually, this thing fits the role. And this is the thing. I think a lot of people are going, Insin's back, so I'm slapping Insin onto this team. But I watched a video by Boya around Incineroar, and he's like, it's a good Pokemon, but it needs to have a reason why it's on your team. Don't just put it on your team for that reason. So if Hisuian Arcanine fits your team better, put Hisuian Arcanine. Put the fire type that fits your team better, rather than just going, I need an Incineroar, And I think that we could see Hisuian Arcanine returns. I'll probably go A. I'll probably go A on it.
I was gonna say, just off the back of that, it's like we said, it's between these two. But also going back to like Incineroar and all these new Pokemon, everyone wants to use these new Pokemon. The meta will obviously, this is only like 5 days after like the regulations have been out. The trend of these Pokemon will start to settle in and stabilize, and then you'll start noticing like Arcanine might out of nowhere. There's a tournament that's happening today. There was one that happened last night. Arcanine might just start making a resurgence. Next thing you know, there's an event in the UK at Liverpool, end of the month in January. Anything goes really, and I think it's just we like to write off things because we see like a new thing that's really great. Like I never played Sword and Shield, so I didn't know how good, or even Sun and Moon, I didn't know how good Incineroar was, and I've even looked at teams and like I don't need an Incineroar. I put one Incineroar on one of my teams just to see how it would work. But you're right, it's always around the purpose around the Pokemon rather than the Pokemon itself in most cases.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, Goldengo. It's interesting, Goldengo, because we see King Gambit's risen in usage. Landorus I is one of the Pokemon that I personally think is probably one of the best Pokemon going into Regulation F, just because of the additions of Raging Bolt and also Gouging Fire. But it's Gouging Fire also being a Fire Dragon type. I feel like Goldengo still has a place. It's obviously Rain is very useful. We've seen that with having Archaludon being added to the game as well. But do you really want to double up on Steel types? Metagross has been really good. I know Ghost typing is very good because it stops Fake Out. I think it's in the same position maybe as Arcanine. I feel like people would use it, but there's just so many new toys that are out. It's just quite difficult for me to see it any higher than A, just because of this team that's been flying about with this Latias, King Gambit, and Landorus I.
Yeah, I think it's suffering the same from Arcanine. I think people are still aware it's very good because it had a very good tail end to the last regulation. Like everybody was running it, and it was like the thing you had to counter. It's like you had to counter Hisuian Arcanine, you had to counter Goldengo.
Yeah.
So I think I would actually position it slightly stronger than Hisuian Arcanine because I still think it's one of the stronger steel types.
Yeah.
Plus, you can run a lot of different sets on it, so that's where I think you have a little advantage on it. I would go like low A plus, high A. That would be my thoughts on it right now.
Yeah. Chien-Pao, a lot of terrain usage being used, a lot of people getting expanding force. Ice Spinner is going to be really useful again. I feel like we're going to see Ice Spinner come back into the fray instead of Ice Cold Crash. Dark typing is obviously very useful in that context as well, stopping like expanding forces being spammed. But we see Tachyon Kota on Iron Crown that's being used to counter this Pokemon. I feel like that's been something that's risen a lot. I still think Chien-Pao is very good. You're always going to see Chien-Pao D-Knight. We obviously spoke about this before the call as well, where Dragonite and Chien-Pao is just always so prevalent, regardless of whenever they were paired together. It's just been such a massive deal. And also, with the addition of Entei having Choice Band, not Choice Band, sorry, Inner Focus and Extreme Speed, it can't be intimidated. That's just another Pokemon to add to bolster up the arsenal or the team around Chien-Pao. I personally put it into A plus. I don't know if you think that's too high or if you think it should be an A. I feel like it's better than Arcanine in the current position that it's in, but at the same time, I'd put it in the same bracket as Gholdengo in this case.
I would put it S. I would
S?
go higher. Yeah.
Okay. Why do you think it should be S?
I think dark types are looking really, really good in this meta. Swords of Ruin, plus all its new partners it can run alongside it. I think it's really, really good. I know, obviously, you've got the issue with Iron Crown. I think that's a great counter into it, but I think S tier is really, really solid for this Pokemon. It's just its ability typing, and its partners that it can go alongside are strong.
Do you think the same then for Chi-Yu in this case because of the dark typing, the minus special defense, Beads of Ruin?
You know where I differ on Chi-Yu is the accuracy of some of its moves. So Heat Wave, Overheat.
Heat Wave, of course.
You can lose games off this. I know, obviously, we talked about Ice Spinner and Icicle Crash, depending on what you want to run. It's a difficult one. It's definitely up there. So I'd currently say right now A+, but I might change my mind later on while we're talking.
I was about to say, relative, if we're looking at it strictly as a fire dark type, obviously we know Incineroar is going to come up in a second. And there's just, when you compare these Pokemon, it's quite easy to be like, it fits this purpose, this role really well. But then when you compare like the like-minded Pokemon in that role, it can kind of, you can obviously see that this tier list is going to be quite malleable in that sense.
Yeah, and Fire Dark's great typing. Like, it's an absolute great typing. My thing with it is, like, I've played it so often and missed a Heat Wave or Overheat, and I just don't like it.
Personal bias,
personal
coming
preference.
through. Yeah.
Yeah.
Roaring Moon. I haven't actually seen any Roaring Moons. Have you seen any? Or is it just something that's just probably me playing online? Haven't actually experienced it. I haven't really versed any sense because Weezing's nerf to the booster and what's it called? Protein synthesis has been quite a big thing as well.
Yeah, so obviously that kind of received a weird patch update where we weren't aware that was actually an actual bug. Thanks, Game Freak, for that one.
Two days before tournament as well, or like the day before.
Yeah. I think Kyle Livinghouse tweeted about that. Wasn't too happy he could run his favorite team. Yeah. It's, again, I said it before, Dark types are going to do really well in this meta. That's my prediction. I think early on, Dark types are going to be really strong. However, I don't feel like people are going to pick Roaring Moon up when they've got the new toys in Latias and Latios.
Yeah.
Plus, you've got a few good counters into Roaring Moon if you don't play it well. When I've played Roaring Moon in the regulation before, it feels so depending on the set you run. You can either run the supportive Tailwind set, or you can run the offensive Dragon Dance set. Again, it's why you've got it on the team. It's not a slappable 1-1. I think I would probably put this in B+ on my mind on it.
Yeah, because
it just suffers too much.
I was gonna say if you wanted to go Dragon Dance as well, Gouging Fire has access to that. Breaking Swipe also Gouging Fire has access to, and it's being able to burn on Protect. It's just the new toys that are out have really shaken things up 100%. I actually versed an Iron Leaves last night, and I'm telling you now, this Psyblade machine, but I don't think it's that great, to be honest. I think I played very poorly. Especially with the typing, you just want a U-turn probably just takes it out in that context as well, it being grass psychic. But is there any reason you'd put that above maybe a B?
I would probably go C on it. I can't see it doing too well. Grass, for a grass type to thrive, it has to have certain toolkits for it to be useful. And I don't know what this has got in it. I saw someone run an ally switch version the other night in the tournament, and
Yeah,
I'm just not 100% sure how well that's going to do.
that makes sense. Sinistra, we saw someone from the UK scene actually get top 4 with Sinistra in Gdansk. I've not seen Sinistra too much either. I still think it's a really good Pokemon. I think it's really solid. You did also just mention that Dark types are going to be very prevalent, especially with the resurgence of a lot of these Psychic types, with Iron Crown and a lot of people using Indeedee and Hatterene getting Expanding Force. Do you feel like that in itself is going to just reduce the usability of Sinistra? And obviously Amoonguss seems like a better Pokemon overall to use and it's more snappable.
Yeah, I mean, I would personally, straight away for me, this hits the B+ tier. I think it's one of those mons that if you don't have an answer to it, it becomes very difficult to manage. Again, a lot of these Pokemon fall into a category of if you don't have an answer to it or an answer to its tech, then you're going to struggle against it.
Yeah,
I've played Sinistra, felt no effect by it. I've played other Sinistras with a different team and gone, I have a Sinistra problem on my team. I can't answer it if I play it.
Yeah.
So it's knowing we kind of got an answer to it if it does appear. It's going to appear somewhere. Someone will use it. People like the teacup.
No, 100%. If we're gonna just put if we put the Ogopons, we just rate them all together. Do you feel like Wellspring will be the most dominant one again? This regulation, I'm not too. I feel like it will be, but I feel like also Raging Bolt, having a Thunderclap, we're gonna see Terrors being used less often. Obviously, the special defense boost is still useful. It's just I feel like it'll serve its purpose, but I feel like you won't be tearing this mon as much as you would in the last regulation.
Yes and no. I think people right now, again, are trying to answer, do they want Rapid Strike Urshifu or do they want Ogreborn on their team? And that depends on the rest of your team and what you're trying to do with it. I think Ogreborn Wellspring for me is A+. I love this Pokemon. I've used it a lot. It's a great Pokemon. It just depends on how you build it again with it. But I think it's A+. I think it's definitely one of the better Ogreborns.
Half Flame.
It's gonna suffer a little bit. I would go A on this one. I think the Follow Me variant's got viability nowadays. I don't think the Sword Stance one's that good anymore. Too much Intimidate in the meta.
Yeah. And then, to be honest, I haven't actually used either one of these Ogrephons, so I can't really speak to them too much. I know I've seen the Defiant one, obviously, but I feel like there's so many better Defiant users that you wouldn't pose to use this Ogrephon, really, if I'm completely honest with you.
Again, I think with these two, it's what you want them to do on your team. I think Ogreborn Cornerstone's really good on Trick Room teams. Just for the whole Among Us answer, the 100% rock type attack, and its toolkit. And again, like you said, with the Ogreborn, like the normal Ogreborn, it's what you want it for over another Defiant Mon. The good thing with that one is you can run an item on it. But with these two, I'd probably go B tier. That's where I would end up placing them.
So we've spent some time So the tier list in its totality looks like this. The tier list is not ordered, but I know there's definitely standout Pokemon that we want to discuss. I'm just gonna start from the top down, Simon. To be honest, Raging Bolt. I know I've given it a lot. I've spoken a lot about it today on this episode of the podcast, and I think it's so good. I got no words to describe and articulate. It's so powerful. Thunderclap, this new priority move is just it's taking me by storm. I don't know about you, but what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think it's really good. I think they've finally given us an answer to Urshifu Rapid Strike, even though I still think Urshifu Rapid Strike is going to be S tier. The problem you're going to find with playing the Thunderclap game is you're playing the Sucker Punch game. You know, you've got to predict when they're going to attack, when they're going to protect, what slot you're attacking. I think it's really good though. I've seen some really different sets. I've seen AV, Carmine's Leftovers, Carmine Booster, Carmine's Life Orb. I think it's got all the right tools to do well. Whether it will have the similar syndrome to where everybody was predicting Ursaluna was going to run through the meta, and then it was actually Arcanine that ran everything. Might be that, because everybody's trying to counter it, and that's why Lando Eyes picked up.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see with that one. I think it's definitely a solid S tier.
Incineroar, you obviously have more practice than I do. Let me put it this way. I think it's an S tier because the fact that I can use a Pokemon and put it into a rain team, which is a fire type, just says it all. I don't know how I've got away with that. Obviously with the new Terra typing, but it's just so useful being able to party shot, intimidate, obviously being such a good ability and be able to fake out. It's just forced to be reckoned with.
Yeah, I mean, Incineroar's Incineroar. Like, its toolkit's amazing. I think historically, if you looked at Incineroar before it got its hidden ability, it was held back. So once it got Intimidate, it suddenly became very, very useful because of its toolkit. And the other thing being its bulk. It's a very good Pokemon. You can keep it on the field a couple of times. The amount of time I attack into an Incineroar and go, that's a KO. Because I'm so used to hitting into like Chi-Yu that's not that bulky. But then it suddenly survives and you're like, that's an issue because now I'm getting high and shortage and I'm down on a stat or I'm getting knockoff and then it's got knockoff. It's got knockoff.
Yeah, exactly.
They gave it knockoff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why?
It's just it is so frustrating. Honestly, it's either beat them or join them. I've joined them temporarily, but I'm looking to beat them soon. So, yeah, I know you had some funny tech on beating them, and that was quite hilarious. That upper hand Terrakion, that was crazy.
Yeah.
Archaludon, a lot of dragon types actually emerging quite high up in this case. I've versed it. Electroshock being a 130 base power electric move in the rain. It's basically solar beam equivalent. It's used straight away, and it gives you a special attack boost, which I think is ridiculous. On top of that, the stamina ability, it's just staying on for ages. I feel like this is like your Hisuian Gudra of this regulation.
I would like to say it was because of stamina, but the problem is you can crit it. I like it. I like it a lot. Like Electro Shot, it's a special attacking version. It's got okay bulk, but you do have to pair it with AV. I think you're kind of throwing if you're not running it AV.
Yeah.
And then the fact that you can crit it is a little bit, but I think if you can position it well enough and avoid the crits, perfect. But my answer to it is either being running Lando I or running Choice Band Urshifu and just pummeling through it, and then it kind of drops. So I think we'll see a lot of it, and I think it's a very good Pokemon. Whether it will win a regional is another question.
No, of course. Latias, obviously I mentioned this team multiple times today. What's your thoughts on it? I think it's, obviously we put it in A+ together as a collective. Is there anything that stands out to you? You mentioned the Rocky Helmet set just before we jumped on the call as well. It just seems like it's so versatile in this case, especially with the access to Tailwind and Recover.
Yeah, I think it's kind of running a similar way to how Salamence was running at the end of the regulation. Rocky Hell, Tailwind, Recover, which was Roost on Salamence, and then it goes with it decides what attacks it wants. So does it want it stab, psychic, stab, dragon, or does it want to run maybe like draining? Yes, I've seen that on the set. I've ran that myself. So it's got
Ice Beam as well.
Yeah, ice
Because
is
it's the
good for
icy
it.
winds for speed control. Because you see, the Landorus Incarnate just seems like a Pokemon. We're probably going to talk about it in a second, but it just seems to be something that's ever prevalent in the meta at the moment as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Iron Crown. I know you said
I,
this is a Pokemon that you're looking at as well, and you're like
yeah, I
very
think
confident in.
everybody's looking at it because they're trying to work out what's the best set for it. Um, Expanding Force has had a buff; it's come back as a TM, so a lot of Pokemon are picking it up. But the fact that you've got a Paradox Pokemon that can have a booster, that can run fast, and then get Helping Hand, Expanding Force is really good. Its only problem is Incineroar's in the format. If Incineroar wasn't there, it would be S tier for me.
Yeah.
Um, it just struggles against Incineroar, so you need to have an answer. So I've seen a lot of Focus
Terra Blast
Blast,
Water as well.
Terra Blast, Water, KOs it. I know Cybertron featured that the other night.
Yeah, with
Um,
a little bit of a helping hand.
yeah, so it just depends. It depends on how well the meta shapes up. I can see this Pokemon potentially winning a regional, but someone's got to pilot it really well and have a good four behind it. And I think that's going to be key because once you pick up Iron Crown, you're locked into having Indeedee.
Yeah, I picked up on that. You literally said it's the four behind it, and I knew straight away Indeedee has to go with this Pokemon. It just seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Landorus Incarnate, something that rose in Regulation E. We've touched on it, and different people have used it in Lille. You mentioned that Reiki VGC used it as well. I think this is probably one of the biggest winners in the regulation, just off the back of the new Pokemon that have emerged, and it's just so powerful. And if Sun's going to be prevalent, you know people are going to counter weather as well with rain, and it's just sticking like an Urshifu on the same team as this with the Landorus Eye Tornadoes, and obviously now. I'm pretty sure Whimsicott gets rain darts and it's a faster speed setter than Tornadus. It's Landorus Eye. I've struggled with it a lot. I think this is the one in Pokemon. I sound so traumatized talking about it because I do not like versing this Pokemon at all. I remember you beat me with this Pokemon as well, so it's not been great. It's not been great my experiences with this, but it's so good.
Yeah, it's obviously it's a combination of a perfect storm for it. People have just started picking it up near the end of Reg E, and then new Pokemon have come in terms of the two at the top for our tier list, Incineroar and Raging Bolt, which Raging Bolt can't do anything other than Dragon Pulse it, and Incineroar can only really parting shot it, and it has answers into both those Pokemon in Earth Power. And if you want to Terra Grass, then you get a Sludge Bomb. So it causes a lot of the meta an issue. The reason why I placed Chimpao up so high is because that thing counters Lando. That's why that's there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was surprised it didn't pick up so much, and I kind of wish I had picked it up a lot earlier after Lil. So.
And I think one that a lot of people might be interested to hear your thoughts on, Walking Wake being an A. I versed it last night. Obviously mentioned that Hydro Steam does 1.5 times damage in the sun with protein synthesis. But it does take a lot to get this thing going, doesn't it?
Yeah, I've played around a lot of the new Pokemon, and my first thoughts on Walking Wake, it's fun to play, it's great. The boost on Hydro Steam, plus if you run it with Flamethrower, is great. You need it with Life Orb. It makes your KOs a lot easier. This thing is, I will hit you hard and I will hit you fast, and that's the plan with it. So you need it to be the fast variant, so you get some boost that way. But that's the problem. You need an enabler next to it to run it, and therefore the only thing attacking is the Walking Wake. So if you're not ready to attack, then you're gonna get steamrolled. So it's the positioning of it, and it's heavy on resources, I would say.
Yeah. And obviously, as we come to the end of the podcast, just want to say thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate you spending your morning with me as well. It means a lot.
No worries.
And I just want to let people know that if they want to get hold of you, you can obviously I'll put a link to your Twitch, and can you just speak to what you do on Twitch really quickly before I close off with the last two questions?
Yeah. So on Twitch, usually I just play on the ranked ladder. So I take a team. Usually it's teams that I've been playing in tournaments, whether it's locals or anything like that. But occasionally I will rentals. I will use teams that I've been designing for Best of One. So obviously the prologue for the Best of One tournaments coming up. So probably you'll see me feature a team that I might use in that. Because the strategy, like we said, for Best of One and Best of Three is very different. So that's the content I kind of put out on that one. As you've spoken, I'm always happy to have the audience ask questions, come in, chat. It's a very chill kind of vibe, and I'll chat to anyone while I'm playing. It's just I'm playing a game, and I'll chat to the people who come in on that one.
No, of course, I appreciate that. And also, if you want to get hold of you, you also have an account on Twitter as well, which I'll put into the description just to tweet out, because you made some interesting picks for your Pokemon diagram, so I'll let people have the judgment on that and what they think about that. But as we round off, we obviously mentioned all these Pokemon in Regulation F. What Pokemon do you personally want to use, or something that you're like, okay, I'm going to give this a shot?
Like I've said, I've already tried a lot of them, and a lot of them have yielded different results. I think going back to my roots, I always love playing Tracheon Whim. Tracheon Whim is just fun. It's just a fun one to play, like I said, and Tracheon's now got upper hand. For people who don't know, that stops any priority moves, and I did not realize it does around 60% to a bulky Incineroar when it tries to fake you out, so it's just crazy.
Yeah, and obviously, I like to end off the episodes with a final question, and this one is: if you're creating a Regulation F team, and you had to choose 2 Pokemon, who would you build it around? And I'm guessing I know what your answer would be, but I'm just curious, who would it be?
Yeah, it would be Tracheon, definitely. They're just fun to play. They're just a fun pairing to play. I think you need to learn the flow chart for them, because I think people just think you can just go, right, I'm going to go fast and hit heavy. I think if you can learn the nuances of when to do that and the supporting cast around them, you'll have a very good team to play on Best One ladder or even Best 3.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for your time. Just want to acknowledge you again. Appreciate you, and I will see you soon. I'll be seeing you in Liverpool, my friend.